Welcome to the debate. Today we're really digging into a pretty bold claim from the text before us, that self-belief isn't something that just happens to you. It's actually a conscious decision you actively make. This fundamentally challenges how many of us think about personal growth and, well, achieving our goals. So the core question we're wrestling with is self-belief primarily a proactive, volitional choice, or does it fundamentally emerge from, or is it maybe heavily reliant upon, feelings, tangible evidence, and, acquired competence?
Exactly. And my perspective, drawing from the ideas presented, really champions this idea of radical agency, arguing that the decision itself is the primary catalyst.
Right. And my colleague will explore the equally compelling view that while intent clearly matters, truly sustained belief often seems to blossom from, well, a more fertile ground of demonstrable competence and maybe emotional congruence.
hmm
Okay, so from my side, the writing makes a compelling, almost provocative assertion. Belief is a decision, not a feeling. It positions self-belief as an active choice, rather than, say, a passive experience or an emotion that simply arrives. The core insight here, and it really resonates deeply with principles of cognitive reframing, is that your whole life shifts the moment you choose to believe in yourself. Now, this means we shouldn't delay action, waiting for confidence to magically appear or, for every single skill and indicator to align perfectly. It's about deciding now. The argument is firm. No one is ever ready. Instead, readiness isn't something that arrives. It's something you claim. The path forward, then, is to act like someone who believes, to essentially rehearse your future selves until you grow into them, making that initial decision tangible, and eventually allowing the feeling of belief to catch up. Ultimately, the text argues, the person who succeeds is the person who chooses to believe before they have proof.
Okay. I definitely appreciate the power in framing belief as a proactive choice. Particularly for overcoming inertia. That's clear. However, I suppose I question whether this characterization fully captures the multifaceted nature of self-belief. The text suggests, I am ready, not because the evidence supports it. Rather, it's the sole path forward. This raises a critical question for me. Does this perspective adequately account for the natural human tendency, which seems rooted in, evolutionary psychology and learning theory, to seek validation and build competence? While acting as if can certainly initiate momentum, it's a form of behavioral activation, sure. I'm not convinced that truly deep-seated, resilient self-belief isn't significantly influenced by, or perhaps even requires, a foundation of tangible experience, acquired skills, and, importantly, internal emotional alignment. Without these reinforcing elements, can the initial decision alone really sustain belief indefinitely, especially when you're faced with significant setbacks or perhaps a prolonged lack of demonstrable progress?
Right. And this perspective champions the absolute primacy of that choice, asserting, as we said, belief is a decision, not a feeling. And further, that it doesn't matter if you've acquired all the necessary skills or indicators. The transformative power lies in the unwavering commitment to this decision. This commitment then acts as the psychological leverage point, right? It enables the action that ultimately generates the very evidence and shifts the feelings we might be waiting for. It's about breaking that often paralyzing cycle of waiting for external validation and instead proactively creating momentum from an internal locus of control. It suggests that agency isn't just a consequence of success, it's actually the catalyst.
I grasp the profound utility of that decide now mentality for overcoming inertia, absolutely. And it's certainly a compelling argument for intentionality. Yet, my concern is whether a purely volitional belief, one that's kind of unanchored by any evidence or eventual emotional alignment, can truly endure the inevitable friction of reality. From a cognitive psychology standpoint, while we can certainly decide to act in the absence of belief, can genuine, sustainable belief truly flourish without any supporting empirical feedback or an eventual shift in feeling? I mean, consider the vast literature on self-efficacy, for instance, which posits that past successes, even small ones, are pretty critical in building that internal sense of capability.
Does the framework of belief is solely a decision risk oversimplifying the intricate psychological processes of belief formation, potentially making it harder maybe to sustain that belief when faced with those inevitable challenges?
Well, the writing offers a forceful counter to that very idea of waiting, stating, waiting for readiness is like waiting for rain in the desert. It won't come. It's a powerful argument that readiness isn't something that arrives, it's something you claim. This act of claiming, this decision to be ready, is presented as the real magic that bends reality into your favor, opening doors and building momentum, precisely because it's a proactive step others often hesitate to take. It leverages what we might call a form of self-fulfilling prophecy, doesn't it? Where the decision itself creates the conditions for its own validation.
Okay, I agree that the concept of claiming readiness is incredibly empowering for overcoming analysis paralysis, and it's definitely a critical component of a growth mindset. I see that. However, what practical psychological mechanisms does this decide first model offer to prevent that commitment from just dissolving when external realities consistently contradict the internal claim? Think of high-stakes environments like, say, surgical training or the early stages of a complex engineering project. While the initial decision to approach these challenges is crucial, simply claiming readiness without a foundational layer of rigorous practice, verified competence, or, a baseline of actual preparation, well, isn't that just optimistic? It could even be dangerously irresponsible, leading to detrimental outcomes and ultimately a profound erosion of self-belief. Where does the text guide us on balancing this powerful claim with the undeniable need for demonstrated skill?
Fair question. But the beauty of this approach, I think, is in its practicality. The instruction to act like someone who believes and to behave as if belief is already yours is presented as a method of rehearsing your future selves until you grow into them, and it explicitly states this isn't about faking your life. This resonates strongly with principles of behavioral activation and an active mastery from social cognitive theory. It's a pragmatic strategy. By embodying the desired state through action, you provide your brain with the experiential data it needs to align feelings with the initial decision. It's presented as a process of becoming, where the outward performance gradually shapes the inner reality.
I see the utility in behavioral activation for initiating change, and the idea of rehearsing future selves is certainly a compelling metaphor. However, can consistently acting as if one believes, especially without a genuine internal shift or eventual external validation, avoid feeling like a prolonged performance? You have to consider the psychological concept of cognitive dissonance, right? If your outward behavior consistently contradicts your inner state or external realities, that tension can be incredibly taxing. What if the internal feeling doesn't catch up as quickly as anticipated, or if external circumstances persistently contradict the as-if behavior? Couldn't this lead to burnout, maybe a sense of inauthenticity, or even a deeper disconnect between one's internal state and outward presentation, rather than fostering true integrated self-belief? It raises questions, for me at least, about the psychological sustainability of this approach, particularly in the face of prolonged challenge.
Well, our discussion today really underscores a powerful message that self-belief can be a profoundly transformative decision. The text challenges us to stop waiting for perfect conditions or feelings and to start choosing our belief, to embrace the idea that you are ready because you decide you are ready. It frames belief not as a passive outcome, but as an active generative force, a fundamental act of agency capable of initiating progress and unlocking potential simply by the courage to decide and act, even before proof or a fully formed feeling arrives. It's a compelling call to prioritize internal resolve.
In today, yes, we've explored this intriguing idea that belief is fundamentally a choice, a powerful initial decision. While the power of that decision to initiate action and shift perspective is, I think, undeniable, my position suggests a more nuanced and perhaps a more psychologically sustainable understanding of how resilient self-belief forms and sustains itself over time. Maybe it's not solely a preemptive decision, but rather a dynamic sort of reciprocal interplay between that initial choice, the cultivation of tangible evidence through consistent action, and the eventual, and I think critical, alignment of feeling and demonstrated competence. This discussion really reminds us that profound insights often emerge when we consider multiple perspectives on something as fundamental and, frankly, complex as self-belief and readiness.